Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Did a talk yesterday. My name's Daniel Gormally, Grandmaster from Northumberland. I did a talk yesterday at Gosforth Chess Club. So Gosforth is a suburb of Newcastle. So it's sort of like it's where there's like a school there, quite a famous school, RGS. That's where we do the mega finals. Well, actually, maybe that's not in Gosforth itself, but it's very close. And yeah, it's a very nice area actually. My sister lived there for a while in Gosforth. Anyway, so I did a talk there, and I was talking about so I actually met up with another chess player called Jonathan, and shout out to him. And yeah, I did a talk there at the club, which is I think they're quite ambitious. They've got a lot of players who are trying to get better. They're like 1500 level, you know. And Jonathan, had a meal where he lived. It was very kind of him, and then went to the chess club. Mick Riding set it all up, set up the whole sort of talk. I mean, I think back in the day I would have been very nervous because I've done all this YouTube now, doing all these videos. I wasn't quite as nervous as I have been, and it was quite easy. And really, I talked about the subject which I've mentioned before, which is so I went through some of my games. I talked about missed opportunities. I talked through a subject which I mentioned before, which is concrete analysis, and the difference between a strong player, I would say a more experienced professional player, I should say. So obviously, a lot of these people who are playing at the club are strong players, and less experienced amateur players. Is that the professional players tend to think more concretely, in my opinion, just from my work with amateur players. Amateur players tend to, they generalize a lot. So when they first look at a position, because they're uncomfortable with calculation, they will, if you ask them about position, they will talk a lot about the general details, because the reason is, in my opinion, is they're basically trying to avoid calculation. So they're really sort of mumbling. So, but if you're doing that in the game, then you're kind of putting too much thought in your own way. So this is what I was trying to explain in the lectures. One of the things I was trying to explain in the lectures, I was also talking about the different approaches that you adopt, at time controls. When you've got like a long classical game, you've essentially you've got more time to sort of fill in the dots. Join the dots, make the connections in your brain about the position, and you've also got like a proofing. You've got time to do a proofing process. So you identify your candidate move, and then you try and look for a way to, how should I say, try and destroy that move. If you can't find a way to destroy it, then you can then say, well, that move is a possible move. I may well play it. Obviously, I might look around for other candidate moves as well, and then do the same proofing process. But that is essentially, one of the sort of tips, I think, for classical chess. So anyway, yeah, I really wanted to say that I think, it was very kind of him to put on that talk, and David Armbruster, who set it up, and Mick Riding, and those kind of people, Jonathan Rooney. I think like as a professional player, people who play a lot like myself, you need the organizers, you need the amateur players. When I was, earlier in my career, I was probably took, being a good player for granted, and I took amateur players for granted. I didn't really connect with amateur players as much as possibly I do now, because I felt like they were beneath me almost. It's like, why would I associate with those people? But you start to realize as you go further that actually, having a good connection with those kind of people is really essential. As a professional chess player, not that I might not be a professional chess player for much longer, because the money is so rubbish that I'm thinking of getting out. But You know, it's nice to have that, and it's also nice to give people advice and give people tips. You know, one of the things that crops up when you know, I did a question. I said, you know, how many people actually analyze their games and annotate their games, and very few. And this is very typical of amateur players. Very few said they bother to annotate their games. Very few bother to say they analyze their games. This is an essential part of getting better. So it's a very simple fix. If you want to get better, you can get better, but you have to be willing to put the work in to analyze your games. Obviously, a lot of these people, they want to go down to chess club to sort of play, relax. They're not necessarily going down there to become professional players, right? They just want to have a good time, enjoy playing chess. But if you want to get better, if you're genuinely, if you're going to attend a lecture, it probably shows that you want to get better. So anyway, so if there's anyone else out there who wants a GM who's willing to do lectures or simuls or whatever, I'll be more than willing to, you know, do a similar thing, masterclass, anything like that. I've done them at British Championships as well. You know, they're quite generally, I think, quite well received, and people appreciate that you're putting some effort in to try and help them and give them some tips. But yeah, I think that's it. Again, you know, if you're interested in coaching, drop me a line. Um, I should probably leave my email details down below in the thing, but I don't intend to charge a huge amount for coaching. The problem with coaching is, firstly, you need like one-to-one coaching. You need a kind of chemistry with a player, and sometimes it's also difficult to. Well, firstly, the problem with coaching is it's quite expensive for a lot of people. So I obviously charge a reasonable amount. I charge £50 an hour for individual coaching. It's quite a lot for some people. They can't afford it. The other problem is you don't always have the chemistry with the student. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And the other issue I would say with coaching is, you know, it's very easy just to give out random lessons and not actually prepare any concrete material. And there's something you, as a coach, you want to avoid, but it's very easy to kind of lapse into that. And I was thinking of developing something more concrete and more where you're able to tailor it to each individual student, but it's difficult to develop. It takes a long time. So um anyway, so those are my thoughts. Yeah, leave your comments down below. Are you part of a chess club? Do you actually bother to analyze your games? Do you bother to annotate your games, or do you not care? You know, would you be interested if you run a chess club? Would you be interested in having a master class? Not necessarily by me, by somebody else. These are kind of interesting questions, but yeah, again, you know, like thanks to Gosforth. And someone came up to me actually before the British Blitz, a guy called Leonardo, so shout out to him. And he mentioned that his coach, Gasanov, hopefully I'm not giving away too much. he actually said, you know, check out Gomali's channel because he's got a lot of tips for amateur players. And he mentioned my video about, you know, 10 reasons why you suck at chess. And the thing about how professional players start with concrete calculation, the first thing you start with is potentially maybe calculation. Calculation is more important. Higher up the rating ladder you go, calculation becomes more important. With amateur players, often it's not, obviously, you know, I'm generalizing here to say there are probably some amateur players who do calculate a lot, but they've got weaknesses in other areas. But I was really surprised when I started working with amateur players how often these same issues would repeat themselves in terms of concrete calculation. And they don't go through the basics like captures and checks. They don't, you know, they don't do all these basic stuff that would really help them improve exponentially. So that is, maybe that's why they created this called a app called Take, because that's really what you got to think, you know, take the pieces. Just calculation, that's really the key to getting better and simplifying your thought process, as I mentioned with the actual proofing process. At least it gives you some kind of like, sort of discipline when you're thinking. You know, if you're sitting down at a board and playing a classical game, you're going through that process. I identify a candidate move. Is there anything wrong with it? No, there's nothing wrong with it. Play it. Right? most players, their heads are jumbled when they play. I know from my own personal experience, until I started doing this, it's the same thing. It's difficult to even stick to that anyway, because at some point you go off on a tangent. You know, we're human beings. We're not robots. But anyway, so that's my advice, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff.